Hey, how's it going? And welcome to the show. And today we're going to be talking about bugs, the different species that you'll encounter, how to deal with them, and the rise of animal-borne diseases in the West. So, let's get started.
Mosquitoes are small, flying, blood-sucking insects that can be found all around the world with as many as 3,500 different species, varying from region to region and the different afflictions they may carry. Here in Canada, mosquitoes are generally always active throughout the paddling season, from early spring to fall, but are usually at their worst during the months of June and July. They generally attack in groups, from small bands to large swarms, and during the heat of bug season can truly be awful directly after sundown, as they become more active at this time. Here's an example of what this can look like, as it is hard to describe in words just how in your face they can be. Now, I find it's generally preferable to be already tucked away in your shelter or out by a roaring fire at this time, avoiding the brunt of it, mitigating exposure. But sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, and you just gotta get out there and deal with it. Mosquitoes breed, then lay their eggs in still stagnant water, with a single female laying approximately 100 to 200 eggs on average, and upon birth have a 3-stage life cycle, including the larval, pupal, and adult stages. Mosquito larvae are small aquatic worm-like creatures that feed primarily on various microbes, bacteria, and algae. They will then pupate, undergoing a metamorphosis, transforming into a fully grown adult mosquito, where the females will then search for blood in order to reproduce, thus completing the life cycle. Mosquitoes have a rather sordid history and are widely considered the deadliest animal on the planet, taking more human lives than any other animal, including ourselves. They are known to carry a large variety of diseases, ranging from mild to life-threatening. Some of these include dengue fever, yellow fever, malaria, Zika virus, and West Nile virus. If you're traveling abroad to regions where mosquito-borne illnesses are of serious concern, always make sure to get the proper medication or vaccines prior to leaving. Here in Canada and in the United States, West Nile virus has become more and more of a growing concern. First discovered in 1937 in the West Nile region of Uganda, it has remained a regional issue until 1999, where it was found in New York City, killing 7 people, and then spreading across the US and into Canada. It is an RNA virus, generally spread through the bite of a female mosquito who was previously fed on the blood of an infected bird, often causing mass avian die-offs, killing millions of birds annually. In humans, West Nile fever is the resulting illness caused by being infected by the virus. In most cases, people do not even know they have it, as 75% of all infections show no symptoms at all. Although if symptoms do manifest, they can range from mild to severe. Here are some examples of the most common symptoms, including joint pains, headaches, body aches, vomiting, diarrhea, the development of a rash, along with prolonged weakness and lethargy over several weeks. In severe cases, which are extremely rare, accounting for approximately 1% of all infections, the virus can seriously affect the nervous system with symptoms including severe headache, stiff neck, high fever, disorientation or confusion, muscle jerking or tremors, seizures, partial paralysis, coma, and in extremely rare cases, death. If the development of any serious symptoms occur, seek medical attention immediately. Prevention is the best method to avoid infection. There is no current vaccine, nor are there any effective medications to treat West Nile virus. Horseflies and deerflies are flying, biting insects with similar body structures, feeding habits, and life cycles. Both species primarily feed on pollen, but the females require the consumption of blood prior to reproduction. They generally target medium to large warm-blooded victims during mating season, with deerfly season being at its worst in June and July, and horsefly season during the month of August. Horseflies are generally large dark gray flies, measuring about 1 inch in diameter, usually with big dark gray or brightly colored eyes and clear or cloudy wings. Deerflies are smaller in size, often with brightly colored eyes, black banded wings, often with a solid dark gray or black and yellow stripe pattern on its abdomen. After reproduction, their eggs are laid near or above a water source, generally in the muddy banks on shore or on overhanging vegetation. Both species after birth have a 3-stage life cycle, the larval, pupal, and adult stages. Then, after 6 days, the larvae will emerge out of their eggs and fall into the water near the bank, where they will develop for 1 to 3 years depending on species, before pupating on land into an adult fly. The female adult fly must also find several sources of blood meal before mating in a swarm, generally on hilltops or on elevated landmarks to complete the life cycle. Horseflies and deerflies can be frustrating to deal with while out in the backcountry, and in my opinion, are individually one of the most irritating pests you can run into, in that they have a tendency to circle around your head repeatedly, as the sound of their constant buzzing can drive certain individuals crazy, with this being especially true when in great numbers. They also tend to be very agile, often being able to dodge away to safety even from some of our best attempts at striking them down, and they are extremely persistent, often following you for a long time in hope of taking a bite out of you and getting away with it alive. Although both species are considered mostly harmless to humans, deerflies have been known on extremely rare occasions to transmit tularemia, also known as rabbit fever, to both animals and humans. Tularemia is a bacterial-borne infection caused from deerfly and tick bites, along with exposure with infected animals. Tularemia is a serious, potentially life-threatening infection with symptoms including the development of a skin ulcer over the infected bite wound, followed by the swelling of regional lymph glands, often in the groin or armpit, along with fatigue, severe headaches, fever, chills, and signs of sepsis. Tularemia is extremely rare in humans and accounts for approximately 100 to 200 confirmed cases in the United States every year. It is usually treatable with antibiotics, especially with early treatment. If left untreated for extended periods, the antibiotic medication can lose its effectiveness over time. The black fly is a species of flying biting insect that feeds primarily in the blood of warm-blooded vertebrates, and is considered one of the most nuisance pest animals you can run into out in the wild. They are small black or gray flies that feed during the daylight hours and have a tendency to attack in huge swarms, often overwhelming their victims with sheer numbers all at once. Black flies are generally never very far from a water source, as they lay their eggs in running water, and usually emerge during the spring in search of warm-blooded victims, with black fly season generally being at its worst between the months of May and June. Although rare in North America and Europe, black flies do carry potential dangerous diseases that can be transmitted to humans during feeding, including black fly fever and river blindness. Black fly fever is generally caused from falling victim to heavy feeding from large swarms. Their saliva contains certain compounds that act as numbing agents and as anticoagulants. This can cause adverse reactions in certain individuals with a variety of symptoms including nausea, headache, aching joints, fever, and swollen lymph nodes. River blindness, also known as Robles disease, is contracted by being infected with a parasitic worm known as Onchocerca volvulus. These parasites use both black flies and warm-blooded vertebrates, including humans, as hosts in their twisted life cycle. They are spread in their larval form into the blood of their host through the bite of a female black fly during blood meal. The parasitic larvae will then migrate to the tissue directly beneath the skin, then molt into adult worms. The male and female worms will then reproduce, creating 700 to 1,500 tiny worms called microfilaria per day. These worms will then burst through the skin during daylight hours in hope of being eaten by black flies during feeding, where they will hitch a ride in their guts, thus continuing the life cycle. Symptoms of this disease include intense itching, swelling, depigmentation or hyperpigmentation of skin, loss of vision, and permanent blindness. Although mostly contained to sub-Saharan Africa and Central and South America, river blindness, or Robles disease, is listed by the World Health Organization as number 12 of the 20 most neglected tropical diseases, as it is the second leading cause of permanent blindness worldwide. There is no current vaccine, and prevention is the only method of treatment. Now, this is entirely speculation, but in an ever-warming world, it's entirely possible these bloodsuckers could decide to spread their range northward, potentially interbreeding with their North American counterparts, spreading the disease further. It's not like there aren't any other invasive disease-carrying insects on a slow northward march right now anyways. Ticks are small parasitic blood-sucking arachnids, closely related to spiders and mites. There are many different species that can be found all around the world in mostly warm and humid regions. But in many parts of the world, predominantly in the US and southern Canada, ticks have been moving in and finding success in regions previously too cold for them to survive. Upon birth, ticks have a 3-stage life cycle, including their larval, nymph, and adult stages. Each of these stages requires a different warm-blooded host, with the whole process taking about 1 to 3 years to complete before reproduction. Failure to find a host during any of these stages will result in the death of the tick. After emerging from their egg, a tick in its larval form will quickly try to find a small warm-blooded host. They will latch on and hitch a ride wherever their victim takes them for up to 3 days. This can be quite far, especially when their host is a migrating seabird. After consuming enough blood meal, the tick larva will then detach from its host and molt on the ground into the nymph stage of the life cycle. Ticks in the nymph stage are essentially smaller, harder to detect versions of their adult selves, targeting large to medium-sized warm-blooded hosts, including humans, pets, livestock, and a wide variety of wildlife. Because of their size, tick nymphs are much more likely to go undetected during feeding, which generally lasts about 3 to 4 days, and are often considered the biggest threat for infection due to this fact. The nymph full of blood meal will then molt once again into a mature adult tick, where the female ticks will once again search for another host, latch on, and engorge themselves in blood for up to 10 days, often expanding multiple times their own size. Once satisfied, they will unattach themselves from their host, reproduce, and lay 2,000 to 3,000 eggs, thus continuing the circle of life. Ticks across the globe are considered a vector for disease, with various tick species carrying different ailments all around the world, including Rocky Mountain spotted fever, babesiosis or Texas fever, tularemia, also known as rabbit fever, Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, Bourbon virus, and Lyme disease. For the sake of time, I'm only going to talk about Lyme disease in this video, as all or most of the other options are far too rare or uncommon to discuss in depth. Lyme disease is a bacterial-borne infection contracted from the bite of a deer tick. Symptoms include a large swollen red ring around the infected bite wound, fatigue, headaches, and if left untreated can lead to swelling, joint pain, feelings of exhaustion, memory loss, severe headaches, and in some cases, forms of facial nerve paralysis. The disease was first discovered in 1975 in Lyme, Connecticut, USA, and the bacteria responsible was first identified in 1981 by a scientist named Willy Bergdorfer, who found the link between the disease and the deer tick. It is still unclear how the disease first originated, with many people blaming the Plum Island Animal Research Center just 8 miles offshore, but to this date there is still no official story. There is a current vaccine for dogs available, but there are none for human use, at least not anymore. During the late 90s, there was a human vaccine for Lyme disease by the name of Limerix. With a 76 to 90% success rate, it was designed as a 3-dose vaccine that hit the shelves in 1998. But just after 1 year, reports emerged of adverse side effects, including arthritis, in patients who took the vaccine, with 121 people claiming a class action lawsuit against the pharmaceutical company. In 2002, Limerix was taken off the market due to growing fears over vaccine use and lack of commercial interest. Now there are nearly 30,000 new official cases of Lyme disease every year in the United States, but according to other more recent studies, the CDC indicates that 300,000 is a more accurate estimate, as many people don't even know they have it. To prevent infection, it is important to remove the tick within 24 to 48 hours of being bitten. This will significantly reduce the odds of contracting Lyme disease or any other tick-related illness. To safely remove a tick effectively, use tweezers or a designated tick remover to grab it by the base of its head. Pull it upwards, gently pulling it out. Try not to crush it while its head is still inside you, and if possible, store it in a sealed plastic container. Then send it to your local authorities for research purposes. When dealing with any swarm of flying biting insects, make sure to stay covered. Prevention through the use of bug net suits, reliable bug repellent, along with the wearing of long pants and sleeves, is generally preferable to limit exposure. With black flies and mosquitoes, setting up sight in a windy location can be especially effective at keeping them at bay, as their small bodies have a hard time handling the wind. This is less effective with horseflies or deerflies, as their bodies are larger and more able to handle windy conditions. On the other hand, horseflies and deerflies are often attracted to dark colors and generally attack the highest point on their victim, often targeting the top of the head. I find that wearing a dark-colored hat on your head often lures them towards the hat instead of your hair and body, where they can't bite you. Having a large fire will also keep flying insects away, and bathing in the smoke will also help mask your scent for an extended period. Ultimately, this video was made not to scare you, but to raise awareness and to arm you with the right information to help you out in your journeys. You can't fight biology, but you can certainly defend yourself from bugs and deal with them effectively, making sure that trip goes smoothly without a hitch or without getting sick.
Well, thanks again, everyone. Hope this was helpful. Have a good one and get out there and explore.
If you enjoyed this content, give it a like, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more Tripping Authority videos.